Hello everyone. I'm George Hammond, the Financial Times' property correspondent, and I'm in the office, which is extremely exciting after a year of being absent. And one of the biggest questions on my patch covering property this year has been how and whether we return to the workplace. And it's a question we've tended to write about under the heading of the future of work, but actually, I think it's a far broader question than that. It's one that covers the future of city centres, the future of the businesses that occupy those city centres, not only office occupiers, but shops, cafes, restaurants, bars. It's an issue which has huge ramifications for cities and how we use them.
As we reopen, we've got to consider how London's recovery is a resilient one. So I'm leading some work on a city centre recovery strategy that's going to promote a common direction of travel in accelerating that economic recovery. We've got to have a single coherent message here in London from the Mayor of London, government, the 32 boroughs, and and businesses amplifying those messages as well if we're going to get the central activity zone of London back up and running. But that's true of towns and cities across the UK as well. We need to show, not tell, and have real effective communication that the cities are open and, more importantly, safe as well for business and for leisure. So we need to make sure that we have that coordinated effort to bring back key groups, not just people back to their workplace, but also students, domestic travellers, international visitors back into the city centres as well. And we know, in my role for Minister for London, we know how crucial that is for that central activity zone, the West End of London. Before you can get to the city, Canary Wharf, the West End is something like 4% of the country's GVA, right here in the West End. So it's really crucial that we understand the ecosystem. The office workers actually go out shopping, they bring in and they use the hospitality, the cultural sector within the centre of London as well. We're going through an events research programme, which is running to make sure that we can accelerate the recovery, understanding how we can start to remove safely social distancing from step 4 of the roadmap on the 21st of June. We're drawing some insight, and that's going to be crucial to ensuring that the cultural offers can be bustling with visitors once again. So
I believe that we're seeing more and more appetite as well for people when the government reviews the guidance and hopefully gives us the green light to get back into offices too. I think the first few months of working from home in the sunshine was quite nice for those of us who are lucky enough to have gardens and outdoor spaces, and let's not forget everyone doesn't have that. So it's been a real struggle for some people, for over a year now. But even for those who have good spaces to work in at home, good facilities, I think increasingly are understanding what they're missing from the office, as well as what they've perhaps gained in terms of other things from working from home. So, whilst I think they'll be more likely, I'm sure we'll come on to talk about this much more, a blend, slightly different pattern of working going forward. I think what I'm hearing from my members and seeing and hearing from both the property owners and the employers is there is an appetite for people to come back together and get all the positive advantages that come from being in a collaborative space, from networking, from building those relationships, and also critically, I think, supporting our young people to learn their trades, to grow, to be mentored, to develop. There's so much that we're missing. So I'm confident that offices will recover strongly too over time, although the pattern might look quite different.
So I think we begin this year and have begun this year in a sort of polar opposite to the same time last year from the point of view of what the role and purpose of an office is, and we definitely see that clients talk now a lot more about not do we need an office, but what is the office for? And we don't subscribe to the view that because people may have adopted a hybrid approach, things have changed dramatically, because we shouldn't forget that a lot of people already were relatively hybrid in their approach to office space. This isn't a new thing. That said, we're quite surprised by how many people it has been a new thing for, and it kind of pushed through that process of change pretty speedily. But most people reacted positively to it and have done, and those behaviours become embedded. But the bottom line is people will still need a place to work, a place to collaborate, and all of those good things. And we really don't see the impact on space being as dramatic as perhaps some would like to kind of highlight.
I absolutely totally agree with what Chris was saying about the flexible working. I came into this job expecting to be consulting businesses to make flexible working the default option. What I'm trying to do now is almost pull back slightly to say, don't forget, flexible is flexible. It's not permanently working from home, because that's basically just living at work. So you're right to actually, highlight the fact that younger people, especially, when you started, George, as a journalist, it's nothing quite like being around someone that's been 20 years in the job, sniffing out stories, getting through those kind of things. It's about having those chance drive-bys or those informal meetings, because we have, you've got to get those coffee machine, those water cooler moments, because all of this is just like the Truman Show version of real life. Someone curates Zoom meetings and team meetings and works out the cast list of who's on there. But we'll only get back when people actually get that sense of what they've been missing, which is part of our communication strategy. You've got to be in London to enjoy the benefit of it.
From the point of view of people getting back into the office, most people, whether it's the leaders of businesses or the individuals within, they're ready to get back. But there just isn't clear guidance as to what that looks like and what the expectations are on employers and employees.
Prime office spaces, positive office spaces, we're going to have to incentivise people to come to the office. And that's partly about the human connection and collaboration, but it's also about the office being a nice place to be in and a place where they feel comfortable and they want to be there. So property owners are going to have to respond to that. And if you do have lower quality office stock, then you're probably shaking your head really hard right now as to how you're going to compete to make that office a really attractive place for people to want to come to, as opposed to just a place that someone's got a lease for and that's where they run their business from. And that's all part of an evolution that is a positive evolution, I think, for the sector.
We will be, encouraging people to come back to the office, but it's not going to be a single, I don't think, yet. The sense I get, it's not going to be a single call to action. You must come in and get back to 2019.
Mm-hmm. I think the subtlety is, sorry, George. I think the subtlety here is it's not you saying go back to the office. It's you saying it's now safe to resume working in a way that's appropriate for you. I think that's the message that needs to get out there.
I think that's a really good point, and that was the. If you can get the problem is you can get too subtle about it, because if you remember, we scared the bejesus out of people with that first stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives, and that worked incredibly well. It meant that trying to get out for lockdown 1, when we just said stay alert, and when we would put the onus back onto the responsibility back onto employer and employees and individuals, people were sort of like, crikey, what the hell does stay alert mean? I've got to do something. I've got to make a decision. So you do need to work with businesses, with people. But you're absolutely right. I think putting the onus back onto people to use common sense and say, yes, it is safe, exactly as you say, Chris.
I think that we're absolutely at the point now where people are looking at the return. They want to come back to the office. They see the point of the office. They individually, as Paul says, they're individually deciding what the right model is for them. There won't be a sector response or a size of business response. It will be driven by the individual businesses, and hybrid will mean different things to different people. And frankly, as I said earlier, a lot of people are already doing a version of that. But I think most people now are at the point where they're ready to get back, and they're ready to enjoy the simple things in life, like meeting colleagues face to face, like having a beer with somebody or meeting a client for lunch or whatever it might be. Those things we took for granted and maybe on occasion dreaded, actually we might look forward to it, just because it's a bit different. And you can't, we haven't touched on it particularly, but for businesses, you can't underestimate the negative impact that being stuck at home for such an extended period has had, on relationships, on individuals, on families. Going through all of the seasons of the year, you have high points and you have really, really low points. And that's, speaking for somebody who's got space. If you haven't got space, those issues are magnified and incredibly difficult. And, as human beings, we thrive through being able to do different things and be entrepreneurial and do all the things that we want to do as individuals and achieve as individuals. And you can only do so much from your kitchen table.
Let's find a way of bringing the business rates burden down, from, we're arguing that the multiplier that's gone up, to 50% and, and rising probably, given the impact of COVID, needs to come down to more like 30%. Let's fix that problem. And the government needs to bite the bullet on that whilst some of these bigger questions and issues play out, which they should do, because I think everyone feels that the tax system is not fair at the moment, and that's different from not wanting to pay it. Nobody feels it's fair, and everybody believes that there are parts of the economy that are not being taxed fairly and appropriately. But that's a huge question, and we mustn't lose sight of the narrow focus on the business rates burden is unsustainable right now, and we need to fix that problem right now, whilst we also ponder these slightly bigger questions.
What used to be called CSR, and then evolved into WELL on its route to ESG becoming firmly established as the thing. I think it's absolutely up there, and the difference now is that people actually genuinely hold it as a key objective. It's not just a box to be ticked, and I think they've recognised the responsibility that they have to their people, because they've seen the effect that the last 12 months has had on their people, and so doing the right thing at the same time that everything else that is being discussed around climate change and all the rest of it. Good buildings that work in a sustainable way, that are good for the local area but good for the environment and all the rest of it, are really, really important. And fundamentally, going back to the point I made earlier, if your message to your people is come back to the office because actually this is a best in class space to work in, for bigger businesses, it's a pretty compelling story to be able to tell your people.
I think that is all we have time for. Thank you so much to Chris and Melanie and to Devona Cresta for putting this on, and everyone else who has joined in and asked such great questions. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.